What made you, you? What makes you think how you think? What makes you take these decisions? Are you more like your parents, or are you totally different? What influences your behavior? Your friends, your parents, or what? Too much questions we ask ourselves of that kind. But actually, we're not the only people who ask these questions. It's a global question. What influences our personality? Genetics or the environment? Have you asked yourself whether identical twins who share the same genes are also identical in personality, even if they are not living together? Imagine having a literal other half who you never knew existed and who shares everything with you as if you are clones, with things exactly the same, but each of you doesn't know that the other even exists. In 1986, a study which was a part of a larger Minnesota study, 137 pairs of twins were studied. 81 identical twins and 56 not identical, or called fraternal twins. Over 20 years. They found out that genetics play a bigger role than previously expected, like making identical twins stand alike, while fraternal ones would stand differently. Also, the IQ was affected more by genetics, even when the twins were reared apart. In another case, where the twins were reunited later in adulthood, like the Jim twins, that were reunited in February 1979 after 39 years of separation. Both of them were adopted by different families in Ohio, who coincidentally named them James, Jim for short. And when both of them got older, they acted alike, chain-smoked, and married a woman named Linda. Then divorced and later married a woman named Betty, and named their child James Allen. Also, Dr. Thomas Bochert of University of Minnesota studied the personalities and attitudes of them, and the scores of the test that measured personality variables were so similar that it seems like the same person took the same test twice. The same goes for brainwaves, medical histories, and mental abilities. Like, wow! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this and wherever you are, welcome to the third episode of Deeper. Today we're gonna talk about how can genetics and the environment build areas of us. Genetics play a bigger role in influencing the personality, especially when the environment is not that different, like what happened with the Jims. They lived in similar environments, which made it easier for them to be alike. But they would have been less alike if the environment was more different, like one being overly rich and the other extremely poor. Genetics and environment impact us, but each in their own way. Some things are affected more by genetics, like IQ, and others are affected more by the environment, like the possibility of being a criminal. And other things in our personality are there because of genetics, but increase or decrease depending on the type of the environment, whether it was encouraging or not. Like being aggressive, where you may have inherited it from your father, and you lived in an environment full of people treating each other aggressively, which encouraged and increased your aggression. But what about language? Is it affected by genetics or the environment? Are we born with a natural tendency to learn language, or what? Psychologists supporting the effect of the environment say that language is learned by communicating in the environment. So the environment is which determines the language acquisition. But on the other hand, psychologists who support genetics, like Noam Chomsky, suggested that acquiring language could not be fully explained by learning alone. Instead, he proposed that children are born with a language acquisition device, LAD, an innate ability to understand the principles of language. Once exposed to language, the LAD allows children to learn the language at a remarkable pace. Eric Lindbergh suggests Like many other human behaviors, the ability to acquire language is subject to critical periods. A critical period is a limited span of time, which during an organism is sensitive to the external data and capable of acquiring certain skills. The critical period for language acquisition lasts until around the age of 12. After this, he argued that the organization of the brain becomes set and no longer able to learn and utilize language in a fully functional manner. And the sudden case became their experiment to test this hypothesis. In 1970, November 4th, in Los Angeles, California, a social worker discovered the 13-year-old after her mother sought out services for her own health. The social worker discovered that the girl had been confined to a small room, and an investigation by authorities quickly revealed that the child has spent most of her life in this room, often tied to a potty chair. The girl was given the name Jeannie in her case files to protect her identity and privacy. Both parents were charged with abuse, but Jeannie's father committed suicide the day before he was due to appear in court, leaving behind a note stating, "The world will never understand." Jeannie's life prior to her discovery was one of utter deprivation. She has spent most of her days tied naked to her potty chair, only able to move her hands and feet. When she made noise, her father would beat her. Her father, mother, and older brother rarely spoke to her. And the rare times her father did interact with her, it was to bark or growl. Her silence and inability to use language made it difficult to assess her mental abilities. But on tests, she scored at about the level of a 1-year-old. She then began making progress in tasks like using the toilet, dressing herself, but not that much in language. After a year of treatment, she started putting 3 words together, but her language abilities remained stuck at this stage, and she appeared unable to apply grammatical rules and use language in a meaningful way. At this point, her progress leveled off and her acquisition of new language stopped. This kind of gave an evidence for Chomsky's hypothesis, but no one still knows whether she had cognitive and mental defects that run in the family or Chomsky is right after all. We are affected by everything and every experience. Genes gives us the base of the personality, and experiences build the trait and determines whether it will develop, show, or will remain hidden and unseen. Personality is way more complicated than this, and many have tried to figure out the personalities of people, like making self-reporting tests, like where the person answers questions about themselves, like MBTI, Enneagram, etc., but nothing is accurate. Nothing will ever be accurate, as you are trying to figure out something so complicated and affected by many factors. You yourself might not even know what your friend is like or what he or she is thinking about, even when you are that close to them. But all we can do is to figure out the main ideas about the formation of personality and accept people as they are without labeling them. I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and see you in the 4th and unfortunately last episode of Deeper by Hannah Muhammad, and thank you.